Let's try that again. Okay. Awesome. Thank you, everybody. Take two. Twice the charm. We are here with a good friend, my brother, Mark Edward Lewis. Hello, Mark. How you doing?
Hey, I'm good. Good. Glad to be on the show.
Awesome. Awesome. So Mark is here because he's doing something really exciting. First of all, we do like a lot of the men's work together, which is amazing. But also, he has this incredible new program that he's working on that helps people out with debt. And it sounds like, yeah, a lot of people have debt stuff, and a lot of things, people talk about debt. But he's got some really interesting takes on it. And I just wanted to bring him in here and talk to him a little bit about it. So, Mark, tell us a little bit more about uh, what what is debt to you, and should we see it, and what does it mean?
It's a great question. We're at an unprecedented time. If I had a dollar for every time we're hearing the word unprecedented these days, it's an unprecedented time. Well, okay, yes, and a lot of people are losing their work. That's unprecedented. A lot of people don't have a job anymore. That's unprecedented. A lot of people, as a result, are having to live from credit, live on their credit cards, or live from borrowed money because the money isn't coming in, or they're on unemployment or something like this. But when there's no income, it's the funny thing about bills, and they just keep coming. Somehow we got to pay for them.
Right, right.
And yeah, so there's two kinds of debt, really. There's the good kind and the bad kind. That's the technical term. The good kind of debt is anything where you bought something on credit or some kind of a loan or whatever, and it appreciates. Some examples of that would be like you put money into a business that you have on credit. You got a loan, and your business hopefully appreciates, or it makes you money, or it creates more cash flow. Or you buy a rental property, and then you put somebody in it to rent it from you, and then the house may not appreciate, but the money it comes back in, ideally more than the loan that you took out for it. Maybe even, Harley Davidson. I just found this out the other week. Harley Davidsons are the only motorcycles that appreciate when you buy them new.
Really?
I didn't know that. Yeah, you buy a Harley and hold it for 10 years, it's worth double. It's
That sounds like
crazy.
the only vehicle that would appreciate.
I know. I mean, unless some old vintage thing, fine. But like, you buy a new vehicle and it appreciates. Apparently so. Who knew?
Huh.
So good debt. If you're holding good debt, it's appreciating one way or another. It's giving you cash flow. It's giving you better value, or its value is going up. Like a good bottle of wine. If you're going to hold it and put it in your cellar for 100 years, it's going to appreciate theoretically. Bad debt is everything else. Bad debt is whatever you're buying is either depreciating or it's not appreciating at the rate that your interest is. So let's say you were like, well, I got a bunch of money off of my credit card and I'm going to go put it in the market, and I can do 10% a year in the markets. Well, that's pretty good. But your interest rate is 20% on the loan. Well, you're in the hole, right? So that's a bad debt. It's not how we want to do this. If you buy a new car, that's a bad debt. If you buy, we call doodads. Robert Kiyosaki calls anything that's, I just have to have it, a doodad, and it's, new clothing. Although clothing is something you have to buy. Naked's overrated in the winter. Clothing you have to buy, but did you have to buy that particular brand that was double the price of the functional equivalent? Did you have to buy the new car? Did you have to buy the new paint on your house? Did you have to buy the new tchotchke jewelry, this or that? Is it something that's going to improve your way of life substantially enough that it's actually going to appreciate in finance? If the answer is no, it's a bad debt. And unfortunately, bad debt, or I should say, credit offerings are typically skewed toward bad debts in a way that their interest rates are very, very high. And here's the example. If you go get a Capital One card and you run it up for groceries and clothing and fun little things and night out and all that other stuff, that interest rate's going to be between, even now at the low interest rates that we have, like 14% and 30% a year. Whereas if you were to take out the same amount of money and say, look, this is a business loan, that interest rate's going to be anywhere from 4% to 6, maybe 7%. I mean, if you have bad credit, then 10. but still way less. So
That's incredible.
banks and everybody already know the difference between, hey, this is a good debt. Here's somebody who's being financially responsible with money, hopefully going to make more money with it, and then we have a higher chance of getting paid back, or somebody that isn't being responsible, theoretically, and could, at a higher risk. It's one of the reasons why the higher your credit score, the lower typically your interest rates are. So debt isn't always bad. So the richest people in the world have a great deal of debt. They're using it. They're leveraging their money, their ability to get credit to make more money. But bad debt, that's stuff that we are now starting to accumulate more and more of because a lot of people are unemployed and they have to find food and clothing and rent or the mortgage or whatever. It has to go somewhere, come from something. And if you don't have cash flow in, you're going to go into debt doing it.
Gotcha. So it's really about it's not about getting rid of debt, but it's about changing your relationship with it, changing it from what are these debts that just create more debt versus debts that create other benefits in my life.
Yeah. Imagine if you had $50,000 worth of debt that was, let's say, at 10% a year. Well, you're paying $5,000 a year in interest alone. So that's not great. But if you could flip that around with a push of a button, not that it exists, but if you could, and say, well, now I'm going to be $50,000 in debt for 10%, but I'm going to be earning with it 20% a year. Well, that's great. Even after taxes and inflation, you're still coming out ahead. And whether it was a business, whether it was royalties, whether it was putting money into the market, if you're making 20% on a 10% interest bank loan, that makes sense. Now, and again, don't do that. Don't go borrow money to go put it into the market. Not right now, anyway. Not as we move into September.
Okay.
But what I do is help people realize, first of all, where are they really at? A lot of people have no idea where their money's going from month to month. One of the first things we do is say, let's take every expenditure that you've had for the last 3 months, and let's organize it. And then let's break it down and go, where can we get more effective? Where can we be more efficient to get the same results? And do we need the same results? Do we really need in our entertainment category to have Netflix, Hulu, going to the movies back when we could?
You're right.
Buying Blu-rays, all these things. Do we really need all of that? Disney Plus, whatever. Can we consolidate that? Could we have game nights with friends and family? Could we that are free and be a potluck and have connection? Is that cheaper but better value? What can we do to, bring expenses down, but also lower the need for expensive things and get the same kind of actual intrinsic value? And we can do this there's basically 14 different categories that we come up with, including medical and insurance and travel and structure of your house or rental, clothing, food. I mean, we break it down. Because if you don't, you're like, look at all this stuff. How am I going to bring this down? You can't. It's too much. But when we break it down into small little categories, then we can start seeing a lot of areas. In fact, one of my clients, after our very first session, they were saving $3,000 a month, which then they were able to whack against their debt.
Really?
Get out of debt much more clearly. One of the things that they did is they were going to a very expensive health food store to get food that they realized they could get at a different store, the same food at a different store, and save a few $100s a month there. And then they got rid of the Netflix and the Hulu and this and started having family nights instead, which were way better.
Let me
for
actually
the
ask you
family.
right here about this change. So changing from this health food store, right? Like it sounds like something so obvious, right? That so many people might go to an expensive store and say, okay, well, let's stop there. But why? What is it that drives them? What is involved in making that change, that choice between going to that particular health store to something else that's more than just a money decision, I'm guessing?
For sure. A lot of times it's convenience. And you think, well, this expensive store has everything that I want. And it did in their case. They had all organic and it's really, really nice healthy food for their family is what they wanted. And there were some nutritional issues with one of the kids, and they had to manage that. It was all at this one place. Great. Except it was almost double, when we did a little research, what you could have done had you gone to that store and that store. And those stores were about, and this is in Los Angeles, 4 miles away, farther. And if you're like, well, 4 miles, that's no big deal. Yeah, well, in LA, that's another 15 minutes. So, it was less convenient, but it was far cheaper. You're like, well, what about gas? Yeah, well, gas really is only, a few pennies per mile when you think about it. But if you could save a few $100s a month and spend another $2 driving, that's a huge investment in yourself. Money that can then be taken and put against something that's causing you a great deal of stress every night, like your debt. Your debt load is what we call it.
Got it.
So you
finding
and
those
then
trades to make.
Yeah, the exchange for value, right? We don't want to lower our lifestyle if we don't have to. Sometimes we must. Sometimes we get so deep in a jonesing, well, they all do it, so I need to, but you don't make what they make, or you've made some bad decisions, or bad things happen, medical. I broke my leg in the men's work on an accident years and years ago. The very first surgery was $56,000. Right, now I had insurance, but I still had to come up with the copay and the deductible. I mean, that wasn't in my budget for the year. So things happen, and that's nobody's fault. But we have control over saying, all right, can we reduce our way of life for a time so that we can get back up on our feet? Because if we can reduce expenses, it's like tax-free money. If you think about it, if I make $100,000 a year and I'm spending $96,000 of it, I'm getting taxed, let's say 30%. I lose $30,000 right away. But if all of a sudden I only expend $80,000 of it, I just made $16,000 a year and I don't get taxed anymore on it.
Fair enough.
Yeah. And I'm able to apply it to something so it also beats inflation. So you got another, whatever it is, 3%. Okay. So it works in your favor to reduce expenses first. The next thing we have to do, which is probably the one that excites people the most, is reduce our loans. And right now is the perfect time to rethink all of your loans, whether it's your home loan, your business loan, your credit cards everywhere, because interest rates are at historic lows, like crazy low. Negative in some cases, which is horrible for the economy. It's a political conversation. We won't get into that. But for us as individuals, it's great news, right? Low interest rates means we are not giving away our money to the banks, right? Interest rates, charging interest is not only a violation of common law, it's actually unconstitutional.
Charging interest?
Charging interest is contrary to common law and the Constitution.
Sounds like a little down the rabbit hole here.
I know, a little bit, but it doesn't matter because our whole conversation is based on, our whole economy, not conversation, our whole economy is based on debt. So they charge interest, and this is how it is. We can get upset about it or just go, well, this is how it is. What can we do about it? Lower that interest rate, because it's just free money giving it away, really. How do we do that? Well, first of all, we got to take a hard look at what the little fine print is on all of our bank loans, credit cards. Store cards are the worst, notorious store cards. Sometimes, like I said, 30% or more. And you're like, well, I don't put much on a store card, maybe $300. Okay. Well, $300 at 30% is still $100 a year you're giving away to Macy's.
That's true.
And that's, no small change. And if you were like, well, a lot of people have, say, $10,000 in consumer debt, which is basically doodads on credit cards. You've got $10,000 at 18%, which is pretty reasonable for a credit card. That's $1,800 a year you're giving away. And if we can reduce that to 5%, now that's only $500 a year. We're saving $1,300 a year. And the mistake that people make is what makes debt consolidation scary to people, and why people say don't consolidate your debt. Because what happens is we can consolidate our debt and our payments come way down, which is great. But then we don't have the discipline to keep paying the same payment. Because if you then make your minimum now, we get in the habit of spending more. And now we're in debt and we have a low interest rate. Our debt's much, much larger because we have a lower interest rate. And now we're in deep trouble. So instead,
just massive discipline.
Discipline's required.
All the temptations on the credit card bill for just pay a little bit less, a little bit less.
Yeah, we want to pay more because now that money's freed up. We don't want to just allocate it somewhere else. We want to then keep applying it to the principal, and it reduces, first of all, the minimum every month, a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more. But also it raises your credit rating. And as we raise our credit rating, there's more opportunities. And then a year from now, If you needed to do another consolidationary, whatever that is, loan, you're going to have much more favorable terms to do so. The interest rate and the expenses, those are the things that once we can get those under control and handled, getting out of debt becomes a much more simple process. It's not simple, but much more simple instead of where do I start? And
Right.
it's overwhelming and it's emotional and it hurts. And every morning you get up and you're like, I don't even want to be alive, or I don't want to get out of bed. I can't take it. I mean, there's a lot that goes into it. I declared bankruptcy back in 2004. And when you stand in front of the bankruptcy judge, and by the way, you can have an attorney, but they can't be there with you. Nobody knows that. You're not there with an attorney. Your attorney will work you all the way to the door, and they walk you into the courtroom, and they go, I can't go in. You're there on your
So
own.
you stand there alone?
Correct. Amidst all these people that are waiting and looking at you, and it's you and the judge asks you some hard questions, and there's nobody to answer for you. You are on your own. So
What kind of questions? I want to know now. What happens with bankruptcy?
well, in my case, they want to make sure that all the money that you have in your businesses are strictly for your business. They want to make sure you're not double dipping and co-mingling personal with business funds, because I had a business at the time, which I was not declaring bankruptcy on. It was me. So, and they're asking you cold, hard questions. They're looking at your bank statements. You're like, why did you spend this? Where is this money? You made this money, where did you spend it? And, hopefully you have nothing to hide, but you're still sitting there and they're looking at you like, how did you mess this up? What happened in the last 10 years to cause you to be unable to make money? Now, of course, the answer is simple, COVID. But it isn't always going to be that way. We're going to recover, and then we're still going to be stuck in this, post-COVID earth. And hopefully none of you have to go through the bankruptcy, because it is a very fine-tooth comb, much like getting an IRS audit, if you've ever had that. Fortunately, the judge doesn't come over to your house, but like an IRS agent will.
That sounds intense. Like, how long were you up there answering questions like that?
It's probably 10 minutes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's not long because they've got a line of people behind you. They're just looking for very specific, tags and things to go, are you honestly, legitimately doing what you need to be doing, or are you trying to commit fraud? Did you fraudulently convey money from one place to another? It's hiding out somewhere, and then when you get through this, it'll come back. All that stuff they want to find out about it. But you're there alone, and it's a little bit scary. Not to mention, your credit's hosed for 10 years.
Right.
It's hosed. So in the program that I talk about and help my clients through the debt scenarios that they're in, we have to improve our credit rating, even if we have a bankruptcy. And there's some very specific ways that we can do that. In fact, one of our friends, a man doing this, was able to improve his credit score by 100 points in less than a year, doing this kind of stuff. And he had crap credit. And it went up, and now he's able to get reasonable favorable loan interest rates and amounts, because just being a little bit disciplined. And been doing the men's work, that discipline is everything, and it's very difficult to do discipline without accountability. And we find that people who get out of debt get right back in without accountability. We talk about away from conversations versus toward conversations. One of the first things we do is identify a conversation that is, I want to get out of debt, versus I want to be financially free. Because it's like, I don't want to be fat, is a very different conversation than I'm going to be healthy.
Right.
The person who doesn't want to be fat truly gets out to the place where they're not fat anymore, but they can't move forward. Why not? Because that's not their context.
Right, because they don't know where they're going. Right. No, you're absolutely right. I love that that's your approach to it. Because you're right. I mean, I'm always like, yeah, I would love to get out of debt, right? I've got some credit cards I'd love to get rid of. I've certainly got some of those nightmarish credit, interest rates like you were talking about. But they are just sort of there. And you're right. There really isn't a lot of education right now. And certainly it's not designed to help you understand it, getting out of it. So that's really good. And I'm glad that you're bringing on the mindset piece about it. You brought up COVID a lot. And obviously these are very bizarre economic times. And you mentioned about finding what kind of expenses we can cut down. And I look around, I'm like, so many expenses are cut out of my life, because 90% of my life has just been cut out. So, what kind of things are you seeing right now, and what advice might you have for somebody who can use this time to focus on getting out of debt, or things they can do to position themselves to do that?
First of all, you have to admit that you're in debt. And some people are like, I've got this. Yeah, but that's not admitting that you're in debt. You have to say, this could go badly. And the question to ask yourself is, could I be okay if I missed a month's work? If I didn't have income for a month, would I be all right? 2 months, 3 months, 6 months. If you can't answer 6 months that you could go without cash flow in, then either you haven't been disciplined about putting money away, or the debt load is so deep that you have to have the money to keep that debt payment happening. So one or the other, we have to take a look at that and go, I'm in debt, or I need to save or invest. Once we get there, then we have to look at our expenses, as I mentioned. And the big expense that we have to take a look at is entertainment. And that includes, now you're in LA, so not a lot of people are eating out. But it used to be, eating out was the killer, right?
Right.
It's so expensive. But that's kind of been wiped out. Entertainment is a big one. And then, and again, not too many people are traveling these days. But anything else that has cropped up as a result of sequestering and being at home. Because there's going to be some expenses there that weren't there a year ago. Maybe the same expenses that are a lot more. And we want to take a look at where we are self-soothing. And a lot of people are. And it's okay. It doesn't have to be bad. It's just like, oh, I have a lot more entertainment, or oh, I eat a lot more food. Now, you look great. The last time I saw you, you know, a lot of people they put on the COVID-15. You looks like you've taken off the COVID-15.
Well, thank you, sir.
That's what it looks like to me. Yeah, look amazing.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah. So obviously, food isn't your thing, but for some people it is. They're like, I'm just going to eat. Find out where your expenses are fat, where they're unnecessary, and we want to bring them down this way. And then interest rates. Taking a look at your debt in a cold, hard, numeric way, and then taking a look at those interest rates and seeing if we can bring those down. How do we bring them down? Well, you've got a relationship with your bank, whatever bank that is. You want to walk into that bank or drive through. Out here in Tennessee, they have to drive through. You can't actually go into the banks anymore. You have to drive through. And you put the little thing in the thing and it sucks it in, you know. It's weird. But you go in and you have a conversation with your banker in the drive-through now, and you're like, listen, I've got $45,000 of debt at various interest rates at various banks. I'd like to bring them all here, please, and I'd like to have an interest rate of 5% or less, or 0% for 12 months or more, for a fee of 3% or less. And they're going to go, sounds great, if you've got reasonable credit. And then all that stuff goes into one juggernaut of a debt that is much less than you were paying. Keep paying the same payment. If it was whatever you were paying to all those other cards, pay that amount exactly to this new debt, and watch it get diminished really quickly. The third thing is, everybody likes to play games to win. Now, getting out of debt isn't any fun. It's kind of like, we need to turn it into a little bit of a game. You can make or buy, or whatever you want to do, probably make, it's a good idea, a little thermometer or a little chart that says, here's how we are getting out of debt. And either start it at the top and go down, or start it at the bottom and go up. Here's the number that we're going to hit to get out of debt with these consumer debts. And then every month you're checking it off, or you're filling it in, so that everybody in your family, including you, see we are making headway. And the question I get is, well, what about our house? Should we be paying that off? Should we be putting extra principal there? What about our car? Should we be paying extra principal there? If you have any debt that's over 10% interest, that has to get handled. I pray and hope neither your car nor your house are over 10%. If they are, you really have to rethink that. It's way too much. But especially now with home refinancing and all this stuff. My very first car, I had never bought a car. I had 760 credit, I think, at the time. But because it was my first car, it was a certified pre-owned, but it was still a car loan, my first car loan. It was I think it was 6.5% interest. I'm like, what? That's not good. I don't like that. But they're like, it's the best we can do. And I had good credit, but because it was the first. So I'm like, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to make payments on this car for a year. I'm going to turn it back in and get another one and see what they'll do. And sure enough, a year later, my next car loan with a later model I think that was like 4%.
Gotcha.
And I'm like,
Much
good.
better.
Much better. I'll do that. And I hung out of that car for a while. So those are the two things that you do. Bring the entertainment and find the entertainment expenses down, and find any other place that have kind of risen up, bring those back down as expenses, and then bring your interest rates down. And then lastly, make your little map, a chart, and then go, here's how we're going to get out of it. By when.
Whew. Awesome. And that's all something that you help folks get to in your new program. Is that true?
Yeah, for sure. And then I obviously do it with clients directly. I'll say this. A lot of people aren't in debt right now. They've positioned themselves well, or they're still working. For them, they're like, all right, we'll work from home or whatever. But now the opportunity is investments. And it's sort of two sides of the coin. How do I get out of debt? And then once I'm out of debt, what do I do with the money that I have? How do I invest it? Where can I get a maximum return? And we all know that putting things into CDs and a savings account, it's like, let's not do that. And in fact, a lot of people have debt. They'll have $20,000 of debt and they'll have $13,000 in savings. And they don't think to go, dude, take all the savings and put it against the debt. Because they're like, oh yeah, but it's savings. I'm like, yeah, but if you've got $20,000 at 10%, that's $2,000 a year. If you've got $10,000 at 0.1%, your savings account, that's $10 a year. So it's costing you $1,990 to keep your savings every year. Just take the savings, pay it down, and then keep that payment up, because now your $20,000 is $7,000, but keep the payment and you'll get out of it, and whatever the math is. So one of the things I do is I help people with cryptocurrency and with options trading maximize investment with some very specific kinds of skills and techniques and mindset, always mindset, to basically do what my big mission is, which is get power back. We've failed. I don't think political means is going to help us as individuals, as people of the United States or the world, get our power back. I know racism and dealing with racism isn't. It's just going to keep us spiraling, keep us at war with each other. Race, creed, none of those things are going to help us get our power back, which was taken from us by, and I'll let you know, I'll let you figure out whoever you think it is. It could just be very simply that the government has been continually taking from us for the last 200 years. And it ends up that the markets, whatever market that is really, doesn't care about race, creed, orientation, age, gender, none of it. All it cares about is, I'm going to take your money. That's what the markets are about. And people think, oh, I'm going to buy some stock. Well, that's good, but just remember that it's organized to take your money. So if you knew how to trade the way the market makers traded, then you could take back your money that's been taken from us for the last 100 or so years. And as we continue to take back our power, the money, our power, then we can transform. Because again, politically, race, religion, it just isn't working the way we wished it could. The only thing that anybody respects is money, power. So imagine if we had everybody in South Central United States, South Central Los Angeles, able to trade and get 1% of their account every day. Let's say somebody had $2,000. And like, I only have $2,000 to trade. Well, what if you could do $20 a day? That's 1%. Well, in a month, you'd have $2,400. There's 20 trading days every month. And then a month after that, if you then did $25 a day, you'd have $2,900. And then $3,500. And then $5,000. And then after a year, you'd have a pretty significant amount of money. And if you trained everybody in your community how to do it, it would transform everything. There would be poverty. We wouldn't care about all the little problems that we're having. We could just be together, connect, build bridges, and do the kind, proverbial bridges, maybe literal, and create the kind of culture that we've been wishing for, that we all want. I think it's possible, and that's what I'm up to with not just my clients, but I have a class on Tuesday nights that I teach for free on how to do this, specifically with options, sometimes with cryptocurrency. But it doesn't take much, and with just a little knowledge and a mental and emotional discipline, we can do this, and we can get back the power that we've lost.
That's amazing. What an incredible mission to educate people about just an amazing mission. Thank you for what you're doing, Matt, and thanks for bringing it to us today. Mark, where can people find you and find out more about what you're up to?
I'm at my website's the www.5yearplancoach.com. 5yearplancoach.
The number 5? Yeah, I'll
number 5. Yeah.
Okay.
And then I'm on Facebook, Mark Edward Lewis. And there is a group called Start Trading on Facebook, and that's where I do my Tuesday night at 8 p.m. just free course, free sessions, answer questions, show how we do what we do, and to try to disseminate this information on how to get our power back.
Awesome. I'll get those links for you. We'll put them up in the comments. And thanks, man, so much for being here. This is so fascinating stuff. Thank you for bringing this to us. And I hope you enjoyed it. Leave us some comments. We'll get back to you. And we'll talk to you later.
Thanks, everybody.